So firstly, good evening. Thank you for giving up your time to come along to today's session. Um, as I mentioned earlier, there is a chat function within the Zoom window, so please feel free to drop any questions in that you might have. I'll do my very best to answer all these questions as we go through the course of this evening. Um, I think it's just to start with, if I just introduce myself, my name is Mark Covington. I founded Snap Sponsorship back in 2012, and my objective this evening is to take you through a bit of the history of where it started, bringing up to speed with what we're seeing in terms of trends within the sponsorship space across the grassroots landscape, and then ultimately share with you some of the experiences that other clubs are um, experiencing when using the Snap platform and how that's helped them move things forward from a sponsorship perspective. So without further ado, most of what I'm going to do this evening will be sharing and showing you things through the Snap system itself. I'm going to start off by going through everything around value creation and ultimately how that then translates into a proposal, how we go about engaging local businesses, and importantly, how engaging local businesses needs to move on from being a open palm, please may I have, begging bowl. We're a great club, come and support us, into something which is more value driven to look at how we deliver something tangible back to those businesses. I'm going to talk a bit about creating lasting relationships, and importantly, this revolves around good quality activations, and that's very closely linked with how we win them in the first place. But obviously, keeping them is a whole nother piece of work. And then finally, I'll finish up with kind of the future of grassroots sport and how we see sponsorship playing its role within that matrix. So, um, I think just to kick things off, I'll just give you a bit of a background to myself and the company and how we got to where we are today. So, I was very fortunate. I went to Loughborough University and I played rugby. That was my sport. But I also threw the hammer in athletics. So, my home athletics club was Guildford, and we operated out of a local authority leisure centre called Guildford Spectrum. And we had the track there. We had a football club that we shared the ground with that used to play um, out in the outfield, and obviously we used to throw and create divots and cause all sorts of havoc there. And when I got to university, I found it was very difficult to try and juggle both things. So I had rugby on one hand and then obviously athletics on the other. And whilst the seasons were quite complementary, there was a lot of demand on our time. Um, and I went down the route of focusing on my rugby in my third year at university, as I got the role as club captain. And it really brings us into my first exposure to sponsorship and what really started this journey that seen us now many years later having snapsponsorship.com. So the rugby club were in need of some sponsorship, and I managed to secure us our first ever commercial sponsor outside of our kind of day-to-day engagements with various friends and family members of people past and present at the university, and that was with Green King. And we took Green King in as a sponsor, and I must say, hand on heart, it was largely due to the fact we wanted some beer for the changing rooms, but it also served a very good purpose of ultimately helping them build a relationship with the Students' Union and ultimately resulting in them being on the pumps within the university facilities in years to come. Um, what that did do was kind of shine a light for me on the importance of commercial revenue to create sustainability within the sporting space, albeit this was a university. When I got home, I went back to my local rugby club and I saw how the football club at the athletics facility at Guildford Spectrum were struggling with sponsorship. I saw how my own rugby club was struggling with sponsorship, and I put my head above the parapet and suggested I'd help out. And we managed to take our grassroots rugby club from £30,000 a year of commercial income and turn that into £156,000 a year of reoccurring revenue based on some basic principles that I'll be sharing with you this evening. And part of that started with the first thing on our agenda for today, which was all around, creating compelling winning proposals. And for me, this all comes down to the question of value. And we often band around the word value quite flippantly, but what we need to understand as an organization, whether we be an asset owning club who's got a track and all the facilities that we all aspire to have, or whether we are a non-asset owning entity that either hires a facility or simply operates as a running club on the pavements and high streets in the local towns and villages that we live in. The important thing when we talk about value is understanding what our value is. And those scenarios I've just explained there about being asset owning versus non-asset owning really become an irrelevance when we talk about value in the context of sponsorship. And here's why. And this is probably one of my favorite examples of it. And anyone that's ever heard me talk before would have certainly heard this one. Um, Most of us drive a car, um, and whether we're traveling to training or to competitions, we drive in that car. And the simple realities of that is that that car therefore requires an MOT. And that MOT, whether we are an asset owning club, a non asset owning club, whether we play football, rugby, hockey, cricket, tennis, participate in athletics, whether we're a runner, whether we're a thrower, whether we're a jumper, the MOT costs the same amount of money and we have to have one by law. So when we talk about value, the value of my contribution for my club to a potential MOT garage in my town is exactly the same as anyone on this call and anyone else that happens to be a participant at a club anywhere in this country. So what I urge you to consider is and to kind of understand is that you equally have a value to sponsor a sponsor just as much as anyone else, and therefore how you position that will dictate at what level of return you'll get for that value, i.e., how much someone will sponsor you for, and how you bring that partnership to life will dictate how long that sponsor stays with you. So first off, just to dispel that myth. So how do we then create these compelling proposals to articulate to a sponsor what we believe that value to be? And that's probably a good segue into me sharing my screen because, as I said, I want to try and bring as much of this to life for you this evening with real examples. So, first up on my screen here, you should be able to see that on the left-hand side, I'm sharing a fictitious club, and on the right-hand side, I'm sharing a fictitious sponsor. And I deliberately haven't got an athletics club up here because I want to prove a point around the agnostic nature of what it is that we're sharing this evening. So, cricket club on the left, sponsor on the right. If I briefly take you through these dashboards, and then we'll drill into the agenda of this evening's session. So, right-hand side at the top here, we've got Zetra Bakery with a cover image, a logo. We've got their assets and opportunities which they can search. So a bit like if I was searching for a car or an auto trader, I'd be able to search through these various criteria. So I could drill down on an athletics club with a membership of more than 1,000 people that own a track, etc., etc., and that will drill down onto those opportunities. I can see how much I've got to spend left from within my budget. I've got my deals that require attention, messaging, and tasks, and that's the view that a sponsor essentially has. And when they search, they see things like this. So we've got Dice Rugby Club, we've got Clanfield FC, and all of these profiles look and feel very similar. Cover image, logo, geolocation on a map, why sponsor us. This is their 20 sponsors. We can see they've got very little left by way of inventory, just a few players. Description of the club, video, imagery, social media impressions, and then finally that searchable criteria around number of teams, facilities, so on and so forth. And it doesn't change by sports. We can see here we've got a club which only got 7 sponsors, a huge amount more inventory because they've only recently joined us. So all of this stuff's still available. We've got boxing gyms, we've got cricket clubs, and you'll see here this one in particular is one of my favourites. So these guys joined us with no sponsors at all 3 seasons ago. They've now got 55 sponsors. So from a standing start to 55 in 3 seasons. These guys joined us. The chairman, to quote their words, had sent hundreds of letters every year to local businesses. To no avail. They'd had no responses whatsoever. And yeah, I'm delighted to say that they've gone on to secure 55 in the last 3 seasons. We've got American football in here, and more cricket and various others. So that's the sponsor side of the equation. If we jump over to the club side, what we can see here is we've got Big Town Cricket Club, internal dashboard. So again, cover image, logo. This profile is complete, so we can see this green bar is full. We've got the feedback loop here, so people can tell us what they love about the system, struggling with, or outright hate. And the important thing about this section is that we've built this entire tool with volunteers from clubs, just like you on the people on the call this evening, This tool has been designed by volunteers for volunteers to make your lives easier and make you more successful with regards to acquiring sponsors. We've got a referral system, we've got a task management system, social integration, Stripe payments, targeting and attained figures around our sponsorship, a CRM tool with value proposition management. So in the CRM tool, we can start to build on our propositions based on the value, like the MOT I described earlier, and I'll show you that in a second. Our assets and opportunities, i.e. the things we've got available for sponsorship, our deals requiring attention, and tasks. So to break some of those bits down and to dive into our first main topic of this evening. So we talk a lot about the user journey and importantly, how we create value propositions. So the first thing I want to show you is just some of the asset and opportunity areas and how we then build those into packages. So first up, when we go to create an asset or an opportunity, we can either do that flat from the top here based on an empty template, or we can say, okay, we're from a cricket club or an athletics club or a football club, and we use the templates that Snap provides. And hopefully that will inspire you to consider things that you might not have considered before. So of course we can brand tracks, we can put signage up at events, we can brand finish lines, the side of throwing cages, whatever it may be in the athletics context. But importantly, we have the templates to get you started. It'll populate the profile as you can see here, and then we can simply go into each opportunity and then we can name it accordingly, give it a price, a start, end date, list the benefits we're prepared to give a sponsor, attach some imagery, some videography where appropriate, and simply save that. And that forms the basis of our inventory. So the next thing is about how we create that compelling value proposition. So I'm just going into our CRM tool here. And if I go to the return on investment calculator, what I'm able to do is list out particular industries that I'm looking to target. So in this particular instance, I'm going to stick with my silly MOT example I gave earlier. So MOT garages, the cost of an MOT being £48. I need one of those MOTs a year. I've got 1,000 members at my club, and I think I can compel 25% of them to go and use a particular garage if they became a sponsor. And therefore, it gives me a potential return on investment or an income figure for that sponsor. If I return to my pipeline, what I can see here is I've preloaded one of my local MOT garages. And if I go to these guys and I hit the emailing tool, I've given the option to either send them a plain email or I can use my calculation from their industry. So if I tick the automotive industry and the MOT garage, it pulls through that content of the calculation. It gives me a start for 10, top and tail of the email. And if I preview this, I can see what it is that I may wish to send out to this particular garage. And I can hit send at this point and start that conversation. Okay, so in terms of the value, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking about activations which are completed in real detail, and I'll go on to some more of those later, or whether we keep things really simple. If we are a very informal club without sophisticated communication tools, if we are simply communicating using, I don't know, WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, if we're able to send a message to our audience and say, hey, look, we've got a new sponsor, they happen to be this MOT garage, please consider them when you're due for your MOT, then that is an activation of sorts. It's a very simplified, light touch way of taking it beyond a lick and stick badging exercise of putting someone's logo on a piece of kit or on equipment or on our website to actually doing something to encourage our audience to consider using them. And that's the very basics of creating an activation. When we talk about engaging local businesses, so we buy a lot into the social media angle and how we can start to instigate conversation and kind of create that FOMO, that fear of missing out through sharing with potential businesses what you may be able to do to offer them support in meeting their objectives. So, for example, here what we've done is we've built a system very similar to Hootsuite or Buffer or TweetDeck. What those platforms all enable you to do is to aggregate social media, so to post content across multiple channels simultaneously. I'm just going to pick on Twitter for the sake of this evening. So here you can see I selected Twitter, or X as it's now more commonly known. and I can select a set of predetermined texts. So we're not suggesting that this is absolutely the correct tone of voice for your club. It's simply a starter for 10, and you can change that text as you see fit. But what it does is it gets you out the starting blocks. We've got here some basic intro text, a link using the URL to your profile, and then some relevant hashtags. And I can post this in real time, and off that goes to X or Twitter. Then in addition to that, we've built some more functionality here. So you can see I can promote my opportunities. So here I've got a list of all the things that I've got available for sponsorship. So if I've got a match kit, back of shirt package for £1,500, I tick it, it pulls the image from my asset and opportunity catalog, and it gives me a revised set of words which will take the reader directly to this item so they can put it in a basket and potentially buy it or start a negotiation with us. Then finally, I can promote my sponsors. So if I pick on Zetra Bakery here from this list of sponsors, it populates their logo. It gives me a revised set of words, again with links acknowledging that sponsor. And again, I can post it in real time, or I can schedule these posts also. So if I've got a meet on a Saturday and they're going to sponsor the season through to 2025, and our first event, typically us hammer throwers, are off at 11 o'clock, we might start communicating at 10:30 the fact that we're thanking this sponsor, and I can schedule that post, and it will come down here and sit within my calendar, and I know that every week for the course of the season this sponsor is going to get an acknowledgement ahead of time on the day of our events. So that's the social sharing tools. When we talk about how we engage local businesses, what we see would work very well here is within the comments of these posts, once they go live, you can start to tag and engage local businesses. And I'm going to talk a bit later on about one of the deals that we've seen many clubs now do with estate agents. And in that particular instance, using social media, doing what I've just shown you here, Worthing Rugby Club actually were able to go into the comment section of the post, tag in half a dozen local estate agents and get one of them to actually respond. Through fear of one of their competitors getting in there first, they were able to secure an estate agent to sponsor the club for the forthcoming season, and that deal was done within 72 hours of posting that initial piece of outreach. In terms of once sponsors are secured, one of the most common challenges that we get fed back to us from many clubs is around communication, making sure we don't miss anyone off of comms. In here, we've got the ability to simply go through, select our sponsors, mail merge them all in, and then email them in a very simplistic way from the system, which enables you to keep track of all those conversations, and most importantly, make sure that we don't drop the ball with any particular partner that we have, and make sure they're all invited to all the relevant things. We've got a referral scheme, so if you're in a busy town and you've got schools and colleges and other sports teams and clubs, you can refer other people to Snap, and there is a revenue stream for you there. We've got a full reporting suite, as you'd expect. So if I come into here, I can see all of my deals that are due for some action. This one's overdue. It's got tasks. It's beyond due in red. Each of these deals, I can go back and interrogate, look at the contracts, our initial negotiation, any tasks that need to be completed, and these can be exported to PDF or Excel. So when it comes to actually reporting back to our committees around how sponsorship's going, then obviously we've got everything there ready for us. Just diving into a bit around building these lasting relationships. So I talked earlier about activations. One of the things which I think is worth noting within Snap is the difference between advertising and sponsorship. I remember when I first started out with this business in 2012, I used to look at billboards as I drove into Guildford Town Centre, and there's a couple of huge 48 sheet billboards right by the local cricket club, and you know, you were compelled to look at the billboard, understand the messaging, and take an action based on what that brand was trying to achieve. And yes, you might have driven past it many times throughout the course of the month when it was up there, but ultimately no one was really driving a message home or giving you a compelling reason to take that action. So the beauty of sponsorship is we've got the duration of the agreement to deliver what we call activations in the industry. And I'm going to explain one of those or a couple of those in a bit more detail. And this is all about, our third point in our agenda this evening, which is around, how do we build lasting relationships with our sponsors and keep them engaged? So in this section, we talk about activations, then we break it down by industry. And I'm going to pick on estate agency this evening. So when we talk about estate agency and why would a sponsor want to sponsor our athletics club? Well, very simply put, I mentioned right at the start, it's about our audience that we have. So forget about whether or not we've got um, fixed facilities, whether we own assets, whether we are entirely running on pavements. It really doesn't matter. The key thing is that when we finished our training, when we finished our athletic meets, ultimately we go home. Now, whether we're renting or we own our own property, again, is a complete irrelevance when it comes to our audience, our membership's perspective value to local estate agents. And what do I mean by this? So I'm going to just jump into some of the activations that we ran at some clubs. So we used wayfinding signage using for sale boards to show people how to get to which pitch at a particular ground. Other clubs with different sponsors, we've had for sale, we've had welcome signs on main road entrances, banners, absolutely huge boundary banners, but all of this required a physical presence and an asset. So yes, we could put up pop-up signage if we don't own the asset or we can't put fixed signage up. But what we can all do, regardless of the status, is something like this checkbook on the right-hand side. So this checkbook's got a perforated edge here. You'd see it's got like a stub and then the main check. And maybe some of us on today's call are old enough to remember good old checkbooks. What this check basically says is that the holder of that check can present that at any time to the estate agent. And the estate agent will guarantee to match or beat the fee rate charged by any other high street agent. So when we stop and pause and think about this, what we're essentially doing is we're giving our members the ability to get a service at a reduced rate through being a member of our club. So they don't have to pay any more. They're getting a genuine additional member benefit just through the fact that they are a member at the club. But better still, the sponsor didn't limit this to just members because why would they? Ultimately, they want to sell more houses. They want to support the rental of more properties. So what we did here is we got one of these checkbooks and we gave one to every age group manager. And the age group manager could give these out to any participant within their squad, colleague at work, friend, family member, or frankly, random person they saw at the bus stop. Now, on presentation of this check, the agent guaranteed to match or beat the fee rate of any other high street agent. On successful completion of a property sale, they then rebated back to the club a sum of money. That sum of money was very cleverly split by the club, 50% for the club coffers and 50% to the age group where the checkbook originated. And why this was important is it really inspired age group managers to get behind the program because that money that came back to them personally within their age group meant that they could subsidize kit, equipment, end of season tours, travel arrangements, etc. Now, for the club, it was all upside. Yeah, they'd already got their sponsorship sum at the start, which in this particular deal was £5,000. The sponsor sponsored £5,000 for the right to have all the branding on site. By the end of the first season, this relationship and this activation method using this checkbook delivered £22,500 net into the club coffers. So what starts off as a relatively modest sum can actually spiral into quite a significant sum throughout the course of the year. And that's what we mean when we talk about activations. And they're absolutely crucial to turn what can be very passive advertising based logo placement into well activated sponsorships, which deliver longer term partnerships and deliver substantially more income into the club. Okay. Next up, I just want to touch on a bit around our deal negotiation and what that actually looks like in real terms. So let's say I'm on the sponsor profile here on the right. I search for Zetra. I search for Big Town Cricket Club as I have here because I know that's one I've got on my left. I can see the various items they've got available and I bring up a screen and I express an interest in an item. So here I can see that I've said I'm interested. Now, if I look to build a package, interested in ball sponsorship also. Now, I know that in real life, a sponsor is going to say something a little bit more engaging, a little bit more meaningful than this. But you get the general gist of the conversation. What we've got here on the right hand side of the screen is also the price point of £1,500, the contracting type. So if we're sponsoring something which is of a lower value, it might be that it's a very simple handshake agreement. If someone's sponsoring something which is of substantial value from a high street brand like Nike, the chances are they're going to be dictating the terms, so they'll be uploading some terms and conditions. And then we've got this snap contract, which I'll leave it on for the sake and purpose of this evening. We've got the ability to agree, preview, or dismiss the deal, but I'll come back to that in just a second. And we can see that the payment schedule here is up front. Now, if I add additional opportunities into this deal, so it might be that we want to put in some sponsorship in the net lanes, we can again add these various components into the deal itself. And that will build out the structure of the package. So within this deal, what we're able to do is ultimately negotiate the structure of the deal, the payment terms, and finally actually agree whether or not the terms under which we're negotiating it are acceptable to both parties. Now, that formulates a contract. The contract is between the two contracting parties. It's got some fairly high level terms and conditions. And then down in the schedules, it enables us to see the item in question, the start end date value, the benefits we said we'd give, the pricing, the payment schedule, and then finally a transcript of the conversation. I've kept it very light in detail this evening for the sake of speed, but it gives you the idea of the functionality within the system. Now, at the point at which we're happy to proceed, we simply agree the deal, it locks it down on our side, and it will present it to the sponsor to ratify, or sorry, the club to ratify on their side of the equation. Now, at the point at which the club's happy to proceed, they receive their notification 12 seconds ago that they've got this deal, and they can confirm or reject the agreement. Now, it might be they reject the agreement as it doesn't quite meet their requirements, or there are other things within the deal that they believe should be included. For example, we haven't got any activations. So if I add an activation at this point, what does that mean? That's a bit like the checkbook we've talked about earlier. So in this particular instance, it might be that we want the cake shop to do a bake sale, and we want that to happen at the side of the ground. We're not going to charge them for it. We want that to happen because we want our members to have the experience of cakes being served with our tea and coffee at the side of the boundary or the side of the track on an event day. So we're going to have to do a risk assessment for that. So these are the tasks that associate with the activation. So the risk assessment needs to be done by someone at the club. It's pending, and we need it to be done by this time next month. And we can add as many activations and as many tasks as we like. And what you'll notice is on the right-hand side, the screen is frantically updating for the sponsor because this is all happening in real time. So now I can see that I've got a snap contract. I'm going to change the payment schedule because I actually want to pay it in monthly installments. So I'm going to update that. And every time I make a change, it comes across into the chat transcript. And you'll see why that's important in just a second. So I've got a £1,500 deal negotiated on a snap contract. It's payable monthly. I've got the back of shirt, and I've got an activation which contains 2 tasks. Now, from this point, I can preview the deal again. And as the club, if I'm now happy with what I see, I've got the ability to make that commitment and confirm the arrangement. So here we can see Big Town Cricket, Zetra Bakery, terms, conditions. I've got the back of shirt, start end date value, benefits. Because we've now changed this to monthly installments, we can see the amortization of the payment, we can see the activations, and we can see a transcript of the conversations, everything that was said backwards and forwards. So at this point, I am now happy. I can agree the deal. It locks it down for me as a club on the left-hand side here, and it presents it to the sponsor on the right to confirm or reject the agreement. And I'm going to confirm the agreement here. And that then concludes our deal. Both parties are now committed, and the club is instructed on how to collect payment from the sponsor. Now, this can be done in one of 2 ways. They either invoice directly to the sponsor, or if the club has enabled Stripe as a payment mechanism, then the sponsor can pay directly also within the system. I'm just going to log out very briefly just to show you what this looks like if the deals are done in a very express manner. So here I'm just going to come to the Snap site, and I'm going to search for Woodham. because I know that Wood and Mortimer has got some opportunities available that are able to be paid via Stripe. So I come to Woodham's profile, I look at their packages, they've got a raffle. Within here, I can go to the raffle, look at one of the tickets. I've got the ability to simply add that to my cart, go to checkout, and then from this point, go to my express checkout process. And in here, I've got the ability to complete my payment and buy that item. So two very different routes, one much more detailed negotiation, detailing the individual activations, and then what I've shown you just there, which is a very express mechanism of checking out from the sponsor deal. I've rattled through that deliberately very quickly because I would prefer to cover as many things as I can directly through any questions that people may have. Um, so, in terms of the system itself, please feel free to use the chat function. I will happily pick up anything directly. I've got a couple of questions that were sent through to me on email earlier. One of the obvious ones, which I apologize I haven't covered yet, which is around pricing, which I'll come to. And then another one around where do the sponsors come from? So if I start with the last one first, where do sponsors come from? So sponsors come typically in two ways. So we've got what I describe as top down and bottom up. So when I talk about sponsors top down, we have relationships with people like Sixes, who Sixes are a bar that's opened up 17 locations across the UK. They provide indoor cricket nets with food and drink in a social environment, and they are willing to sponsor any club within a 10-mile radius of any of their 17 locations across the UK in return for that club hosting a social at their venue. It's up front, it's £250. You have your social, and then throughout the course of the year, if any of your members book to go there, as long as they use the promo code that Sixes provide, they will continue to provide a rebate of income back to the club every quarter. So actually, the rebate can end up being substantially more than the upfront figure if promoted well within the membership. Lots of people having kids' birthday parties, corporate bookings, and so on and so forth. So that's an example of where revenue comes down the pipe. And this is something which is entirely passive to any activity from anyone at the club. So you kind of can sit back and see that happen. What I say to everyone is that that is should be treated as a bonus. It's a nice to have. The clubs that have the most success on Snap are proactive. If we think back to Wood and Mortimer, who I showed you earlier, with 55 new sponsors in the last 3 seasons, they haven't actually received a single sponsorship deal down the pipe from a sponsor. They've had 100% of their sponsorship success, what I describe as bottom up. And bottom up is typically made of three principal channels. So the first wasn't actually relevant to Wood and Mortimer, but is common amongst many clubs, and that is more money from existing sponsors. So when clubs have a sponsor, for example, like the estate agent, when they have a current sponsor where it's very passive and advertising led, if they go back to that sponsor and say, "Hey, look at this activation. We want to do these checkbooks, and this is the opportunity," what we see is there's normally a significant uplift come renewal or through rebates throughout the course of the year. So the first of the three pillars of bottom up revenue is more money from existing sponsors. The second is our existing membership. There are normally many people within our membership, whether that be adult participants, whether that be parents and guardians of little Johnny or little Jane in the youth. Ultimately, there are people that are probably very willing to get involved in supporting the club, but currently don't know how. And with Snap, you have every single one of your opportunities and your club profile at the end of a URL. So you can share that with anyone you wish very quickly, very easily via whatever communication method you currently use, whether that be a text message, a WhatsApp group, Facebook message, email, newsletters, whatever it may be. And then third and finally is just following our methodology. So those case studies, those examples of great activations in light of things like the estate agency or insurance, wealth management, local restaurants, pubs, clubs, all of these things we've got case studies for, which enable you to go in, have a look at how other clubs around the country in various different sports are doing it, and then apply that logic to your own environment, and then ultimately secure sponsors that way. So that hopefully answers the question of, where does sponsors come from? And then the final question that I got asked on email, and then I'll kick over to the chat function on here on Zoom. The final question I was asked was around pricing, and it's far easier for me to show you than tell you. So let me just put it up on the screen. I'm just going to flip over to another screen here to show you. So these are the packages on Snap. So what you'll be able to see here is we have 3 packages ultimately. There's a custom package which I really don't think is necessary, but fundamentally is where ultimately we run the profile for you and we run the sponsorship for you. Very, very few people now do this. It typically is very large clubs with very large aspirations in terms of revenue generation. Most of our clubs here are either on the standard or the pro package. So what are the differences? Fundamentally, you get the exact same system. The only difference is the way in which the commercial model is structured. So you can sign up to Snap today for free, no cost per month on the standard package. However, we charge a 20% commission on the sponsorship you secure. Why would we therefore go for Pro? Well, if you go for Pro, you keep 100% of all of your sponsorship, but you do pay a $29.95 per month subscription charge to Snap. So where does that leave you? Where's the balance of possibility? Well, very simply, if you secure more than £1,797 in the year, so just shy of £2,000, if you think or you aspire to secure £2,000 of sponsorship a year, you are better off on the pro package. It will cost you less to be on the pro package than it will on the standard. However, we've built this way because we appreciate that some people have a nervousness around getting started and committees wanting to see some kind of proof in the pudding before getting started. So you can sign up to the standard package on £0 per month. You can stay on there for 30 days. As long as within 30 days you tell us you'd like to upgrade to Pro, we can switch you over. If you don't switch over within that first 30 days, you will remain on the standard package, and your next opportunity to upgrade will be in month 12. Just to kind of draw your attention to the first point here under general, there are no additional charges. There's no storage limits, additional user licenses. You cannot pay me any more than £0 a month or £29.95 a month. They are the 2 figures. Obviously, there is then the commission on the standard package, but outside of that, there are no other hidden prices, charges. You can use the full functionality with as many volunteers from your club as you wish, and you pay the same price. I'm very proud to say that our retention rate is 97.2%, and you can cancel at any time. So you are not tied into some sort of long-term agreement. We live and die by your success, and I'm incredibly proud that 97% of clubs that join us stay with us. So that is the commercial model, and that is ultimately the pricing around the Snap system. There was one final thing that I'd quite like to show you this evening, and I'm just going to see if I can bring it up on the screen for you. I've talked a lot about various clubs this evening, but just to bring this all a little bit closer to home, I just wanted to share this with you. So this hopefully looks a little bit more familiar. I appreciate I've talked a lot about cricket and rugby and hockey and football, and I do that deliberately because this is an entirely agnostic tool. It doesn't matter how big your club is, whether or not you've got facilities, what level you perform at, where you're based geographically within the country. The most important thing is the people that sit within it, because every one of your members, friends and family, anyone else that you can bear influence on is ultimately a potential customer for people that sell products and services across the UK. So actually, it's these faces up on the top of the screen here that are the valuable thing about your club when it comes to creating compelling proposals to prospective sponsors. So this is Swindon Harrows Athletic Club. Obviously, you can see they've got a great profile, lovely cover image, cross section of various people within the club, geolocation, why sponsor them, nice write up about the club, imagery, media values, and then all of that information about their organisation. All of the opportunities, so whether it be building facilities, track officials, competition events, the various packages, athletes, everything in here is available for sponsorship. And this profile was built with, just within a simple few hours of signing up, and is now live within the Snap system. And I'd encourage you all to go take a look and consider how that may support your ambitions within your club. That is the last thing I was keen to share with you today. I've got the chat open in front of me here, so I'm wrapped up on the formalities of this evening. We are a few minutes ahead of schedule. I've covered the questions that I got on email, so just as I say, got the chat function open. If there's any other last questions, please feel free to drop them in there now. No such thing as a silly question. Don't have to, I won't be calling out who the question is from. So please feel free to ask away. And if there are no further questions, we shall wrap up. Okay. I've either done a great job and answered all the questions throughout, or I've bored you all to tears and you're all asleep with your cup of tea. Okay. Well, look, in that case, I shall wrap up this evening's session. I hope that's proved useful for you. Um, if there are any other questions at all, you've got my details. I will send out a recording of this evening's session. So anything that comes up later, or when you jump off the call, or if you take this back to your fellow committee members, please don't hesitate to get in touch. I will do my very best to support you between myself and my team. And I hope to see you on the Snap system very soon. Thank you very much.